What if I told you that the very things you're doing to feel safe, successful, and secure, the plans that seem to be working in your outer life, might be the exact things stopping your soul from growing to its highest level? Edgar Cayce, the famous sleeping prophet whose readings showed the deepest truths about spiritual growth across thousands of cases, found something that should make every person stop and look at their life. Most people spend their whole lives accidentally blocking their soul's growth, using survival plans and protection methods that keep the ego safe while also trapping the spirit at the same time. And what makes this both scary and freeing is that Cayce didn't just find these blocks. He showed exactly how to spot them in yourself and gave specific ways to remove them, finally letting your soul have the freedom to expand into the awareness it was always meant to reach. Have you ever felt like you're going through the motions of life, but not truly growing? Like you're repeating the same patterns, facing the same problems, feeling stuck in ways that success and achievement don't seem to fix? Or maybe you've sensed that despite all your spiritual reading and practice, you're not actually evolving. You're just collecting information while something important stays unchanged. According to Cayce, these feelings aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that you're hitting up against invisible blocks, walls you've built that are keeping your soul trapped in limited awareness, while it wants to expand into greater understanding, love, and purpose. Stay with me, because what Edgar Cayce showed about the 8 main blocks to soul growth will either finally explain why you feel stuck, despite all your efforts, or give you the exact keys needed to unlock the spiritual growth that's been waiting for you all along. If you've felt stuck in your growth or sensed invisible barriers keeping you from becoming who you're meant to be, drop a comment and share what that feels like for you. And if you're ready to identify the blocks that might be preventing your soul's expansion and learn how to remove them, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're exploring obstacles that once removed could completely change the path of your spiritual journey. Now, let me take you through Edgar Cayce's powerful discovery about the 8 signs that you're blocking your own soul's growth. Block 1. The safety addiction. It all begins with what Cayce called the security trap, organizing your entire life around keeping things safe, comfortable, and predictable, so much that your soul has no room to grow into unknown territory where real growth happens. Your soul doesn't grow through safety. It grows through challenge, uncertainty, and stepping into experiences that require you to expand beyond what you can do right now. But most people spend their lives building walls of security that protect them from the very experiences their soul needs for growth. You create money security, relationship security, career security, emotional security, and all of it makes sense and is even necessary at certain times. But Cayce found that many people become so addicted to security that they accidentally avoid any situation that might challenge their comfort zone. And in doing so, they trap their soul in a prison of their own making. Every time your soul calls you towards something new, uncertain, or challenging, your security-seeking self finds reasons why now isn't the right time, why it's too risky, why you should wait until things are better. And you wait and you wait, and your soul stops even trying to call you toward growth because you've made it clear that security matters more. The key sign of this block is looking back over years of your life and realizing that while you've become more comfortable, more established, more secure, you haven't actually grown. You're living a bigger version of the same awareness you had years ago, not an evolved awareness that has expanded into new dimensions of understanding. Cayce taught that soul growth requires calculated risks, planned discomfort, and willingness to step into unknown territory, even when every survival instinct screams to stay where it's safe. Your soul doesn't want recklessness, but it does need you to put growth over safety when those values clash. Are you refusing opportunities because they're uncertain? Avoiding changes because they're uncomfortable? Staying in situations that feel secure even though your soul has outgrown them? This isn't wisdom or being practical. It's the security trap blocking your growth. Block 2. The knowledge collector. The second block Cayce identified is spiritual materialism. collecting spiritual knowledge, practices, and experiences as a substitute for actually transforming your awareness and living out wisdom in your daily life. You read all the books. You attend all the workshops. You have a daily practice. You can speak easily about spiritual ideas and impress people with your knowledge. But if Cayce were reading you, he'd ask, has any of this actually changed who you are at your core? Or are you just collecting spiritual experiences and information while your basic awareness stays unchanged? This is perhaps the sneakiest block because it feels like growth. You're learning, expanding your understanding, adding spiritual practices to your life. But Cayce found that for many people, this collecting of spiritual knowledge becomes a clever way to avoid the actual work of transformation. It's easier to read another book than to completely change how you treat people who annoy you. It's more comfortable to attend another workshop than to face the shadow parts of yourself that your soul needs you to accept. It's less threatening to discuss spiritual ideas than to actually live them when it costs you something. The sign of this block is the gap between what you know and how you live. You know forgiveness is important, but you're still holding grudges. You understand the idea of non-attachment, but you're still desperate for control. You've learned about compassion, but you're still judgmental and critical. Cayce emphasized that knowledge is only the beginning. It's meant to be turned into actual transformation of character, awareness, and being. Spiritual information that doesn't change how you show up in daily life isn't wisdom. It's just spiritual entertainment keeping you distracted from real growth. If you find yourself constantly seeking new spiritual knowledge but not seeing matching changes in your actual relationships, reactions, and character, you're using knowledge as a block rather than a bridge to growth. Block 3. The victim story. The third block is what Cayce called the grievance identity, building your sense of self around past wounds, betrayals, and injustices so much that healing would mean losing who you've become. And your soul can't grow beyond the awareness that the victim identity keeps going. This isn't about denying that real harm happened to you, or that real injustices occurred. This is about recognizing when you've become so identified with your wounds that they've become the foundation of your identity, and unconsciously you're blocking growth because growth would mean leaving that identity behind. Your soul wants to move beyond the wound into wisdom, compassion, and expanded awareness. But some part of you is holding on to the grievance because it gives you identity, explains your limitations, justifies your choices, and connects you to sympathy and support from others. The key sign of this block is that you can't imagine who you'd be without your story of how you were wronged. The wound has become so central to your self-concept that releasing it feels like dying, so you keep it alive through retelling the story, rehearsing the grievance, identifying with the victim role, and your soul stays trapped in the awareness of the wounded person instead of growing into the wisdom that could come from healing. Cayce taught that every wound carries a matching gift of wisdom if we're willing to move through it rather than staying stuck in it. The betrayal can become deep understanding of trust and good judgment. The loss can become deep appreciation for what remains. The injustice can become commitment to creating more justice in the world. But this transformation requires releasing identity attachment to the wound story. It means being willing to say, this happened. It was real. It affected me. And now I'm choosing to grow beyond it into something larger than the pain. If you've been telling the same story about how you were wronged for years, if you introduce yourself to new people through your traumas, if you find yourself unable to move past events that happened long ago, you're using your victim story as a block to growth that would require you to become someone new. If you're recognizing that you might be holding on to grievance stories that are blocking your growth, share what that awareness feels like in the comments. Sometimes naming these patterns is the first step toward releasing them. And if your sharing shows honest self-examination, I'll mark it with a heart to honor your courage in looking at difficult truths. Block 4. The perfectionism prison. The fourth block Cayce identified is the flawlessness trap, holding yourself to impossible standards of perfection so much that you never actually take action, never risk failure, Never allow yourself to be seen in your real imperfection where real growth happens. Your soul grows through messy, imperfect action. It learns through mistakes, failures, and the humility of being wrong. But perfectionism keeps you trapped in endless preparation, constant self-criticism, and paralysis disguised as high standards. You don't share your creative work because it's not perfect yet. You don't pursue opportunities because you're not ready enough. You don't show up authentically in relationships because people might see your flaws. And beneath all of this is a terror of being seen as imperfect, and an unconscious belief that your worth depends on being flawless. But Cayce taught that imperfection isn't a failure of growth. It's the very environment where growth happens. Your soul doesn't grow through perfection. It grows through honest engagement with life in all its messy complexity, including, and especially, your own limitations and mistakes. The perfectionism block keeps your soul trapped in a sterile environment where nothing new can happen because nothing imperfect is allowed. You become stuck in what you know you can do well, never stretching into new territory where being bad at things and failure are natural parts of learning. The key sign is chronic putting things off and paralysis around anything that matters deeply to you. You have brilliant ideas that you never carry out. You have gifts you never share. You have truths you never speak. All because some part of you is waiting for perfect readiness, perfect circumstances, perfect execution, and growth is being postponed forever while you wait. Are you holding yourself back with impossible standards? Refusing to act until you're certain you won't fail? Hiding your real self behind a mask of perfection? Your soul is suffocating in this prison while pretending it's protection. Block 5. The blame game. The fifth block is what Cayce called external causation, consistently blaming your internal state, your circumstances, and your limitations on external factors rather than taking responsibility for how you're creating and maintaining your reality through your own awareness. Nothing is ever your fault. Your unhappiness is because of your childhood, your partner, your job, your money situation, the world's problems. Your limitations are because of your genetics, your education, your lack of opportunities. Your failures are because of bad timing, unfair treatment, others' failures. This external blaming feels like honesty. You're just recognizing the real obstacles you face. But Cayce taught that this is actually one of the most powerful blocks to growth because it places all power outside yourself. If your problems are caused externally, then solutions must come externally too, and you stay powerless, waiting for the world to change rather than changing your awareness. Your soul can't grow while you're in this pattern, because growth requires recognizing how you're participating in creating your experience. Not that you're creating everything through simple thoughts, but that your awareness, beliefs, patterns, and choices are major factors in what shows up in your life. When you take responsibility, not blame but conscious ownership of how you're contributing to your circumstances, you suddenly have power to change them. But as long as everything is someone else's fault, you're stuck, blocked from the growth that comes through recognizing your creative power. The key sign is constant complaining without matching action. You can explain exactly what's wrong with your life and who's to blame for it, but you're not actually doing the internal or external work needed to change it. The blame becomes a comfortable prison that explains why you're not growing, while relieving you of responsibility for doing anything about it. Block 6. The comfort of knowing. The sixth block is what Cayce called closed certainty, becoming so attached to what you already believe. Understand and know that you unconsciously refuse to consider new information, perspectives, or possibilities that might require changing your mind. You know what you know. You've figured things out. You have your belief system, your worldview, your understanding of how things work. And now your soul's growth is blocked, because growth requires being wrong, changing your mind, expanding beyond current understanding. And you've unconsciously decided that being certain is more important than continuing to grow. This block often develops after people have done significant inner work and reached certain realizations. They've broken free from one limited worldview and embraced something that feels more expansive. But then they harden around these new beliefs with the same rigidity they once had, about their old beliefs. Your soul needs you to stay open, curious, and willing to be surprised. It needs you to hold your current understanding lightly enough that new truth can enter and transform it. But closed certainty makes this impossible. You've stopped being a student of life and become a defender of positions. The key sign is how you respond when your beliefs are challenged. Do you get defensive, dismissive, or rigid? Do you immediately find reasons why conflicting information must be wrong, rather than considering it with real openness? Have you stopped genuinely questioning your own views? Cayce taught that wisdom isn't found in having the right answers. It's found in staying open to truth wherever it appears, even and especially when it challenges what you currently believe. Your soul grows through this openness, this humble recognition that your current understanding is always temporary, always capable of deepening. Block 7. The people-pleasing prison. The 7th block is what Cayce called approval addiction, organizing your entire life around gaining and keeping approval from others so much that your real self and your soul's true calling stay hidden, unexpressed, and undeveloped. You shape yourself to fit others' expectations. You hold back parts of yourself that might be judged or rejected. You choose paths that look good to others, even when they feel wrong to your soul. You exhaust yourself trying to keep everyone happy, comfortable with you, approving of your choices. But your soul can't grow while disguised. It grows through real expression, through revealing your truth even when it's uncomfortable, through choosing your path even when others don't understand. As long as you're performing for approval, your real self, the one your soul came here to develop and express, stays locked away. The tragedy of this block is that you can appear successful while being completely lost. You can have everyone's approval while having no idea who you actually are. You can be surrounded by people who love the version of you they've seen, while your real soul starves from never being witnessed or expressed. Cayce emphasized that your soul's purpose isn't to make everyone comfortable with you. It's to become who you actually are, and express that authentically, even and especially when it disappoints, confuses, or challenges others. Growth requires the courage to risk disapproval in service of truth. The key sign is constant resentment combined with inability to say no. You're constantly doing things you don't want to do, being who others need you to be, holding back your truth to keep peace. And underneath it all is anger at being trapped, combined with terror of what would happen if you stopped performing. Block 8. The spiritual bypass. The 8th and final block is transcendence avoidance, using spiritual concepts and practices to avoid rather than deal with the difficult, messy human work of healing trauma, developing character, and taking responsibility for your impact on others. You're all about unconditional love, but you've never learned to set healthy boundaries. You speak of non-attachment, but you've actually just become emotionally distant. You're seeking enlightenment while leaving a trail of hurt people who experience you as avoiding accountability with spiritual sayings. This block appears spiritual, but actually prevents real growth, because it uses spirituality to skip over the foundational human development that must happen before transcendence is real rather than escapist. You're trying to go to graduate school while skipping elementary education. Cayce taught that genuine spiritual growth includes and goes beyond human development. It doesn't bypass it. You don't get to skip healing your trauma by saying it's all illusion. You don't avoid learning basic integrity and responsibility by claiming non-attachment. You don't get to hurt people and excuse it with, they're responsible for their own reactions. True spiritual growth means becoming more human, more capable of real relationship, more responsible for your impact, not less. It means dealing with your shadow, healing your wounds, developing emotional maturity, taking accountability, all of which are hard, unglamorous work that spiritual bypass tries to avoid. The key sign is a gap between your spiritual self-concept and how others actually experience you. You see yourself as evolved, conscious, awakened, but people in your life experience you as emotionally unavailable, unaccountable, or using spiritual language to avoid facing difficult realities about yourself. The path of release. Now that you understand these 8 blocks, the question becomes, how do you actually release them? Because recognition alone isn't enough. These blocks are often unconscious precisely because they're serving important psychological functions, and simply knowing about them doesn't dissolve them. Cayce taught that releasing these blocks requires three essential elements: honest self-examination, conscious choice, and persistent practice. You must be willing to see these patterns in yourself without defensiveness. Choose to value growth over the false security the blocks provide, and practice new ways of being, even when it's uncomfortable. The security trap releases when you consciously choose one meaningful risk, one step into uncertainty, that your soul is calling you toward. The knowledge collecting dissolves when you commit to living out one spiritual principle completely, rather than learning 10 new ones. The victim story transforms when you're willing to become someone beyond your wounds. The perfectionism prison opens when you share imperfect work, take imperfect action, show up imperfectly. The blame game ends when you ask, "How am I creating this?" instead of "Who's causing this?" The certainty block cracks when you genuinely consider perspectives that challenge yours. The people-pleasing releases when you risk one real expression despite potential disapproval. And spiritual bypass dissolves when you do the human work you've been trying to skip. None of this is easy. These blocks exist because they've been protecting you from something you feared more than staying stuck. Releasing them means facing those fears and discovering that growth, while uncomfortable, is infinitely better than the slow death of a soul trapped in limitation. But here's the powerful truth Cayce emphasized. Your soul is always calling you toward growth. Always. And when you remove the blocks, the growth doesn't have to be forced or manufactured. It happens naturally because that's what your soul came here to do. You don't have to figure out how to grow. You just have to stop blocking the growth that wants to happen. Remove the dam and the river flows on its own. The liberation invitation. As we conclude this journey through the 8 blocks to soul growth, I want to leave you with what Cayce considered the most important truth. These blocks aren't evidence of your failure or inadequacy. They're evidence that you've been trying to stay safe in a universe that's designed for your growth, and safety and growth are often in direct conflict. You built these blocks for good reasons. They protected you when you needed protection. They helped you survive when survival was what mattered. But now they're keeping you small when your soul is ready to expand. They're keeping you safe when your soul is ready to soar. They're keeping you comfortable when your soul is ready to be transformed. The blocks serve their purpose. And now it's time to release them. Not all at once, not perfectly, not without fear or difficulty, but intentionally, consciously. One choice at a time. Choose one risk your soul is calling you toward, and take it despite your addiction to security. Live out one spiritual principle deeply instead of collecting more knowledge. Release one grievance story and discover who you are without it. Share one imperfect creation. Take responsibility for one pattern you've been blaming externally. Question one certainty you've been defending. Risk one real expression that might lose approval. Do one piece of human healing work you've been trying to bypass spiritually. Just one today and watch what begins to shift. Because here's what Edgar Cayce understood that most people don't. Your soul's growth isn't something you have to achieve. It's something you have to allow. And allowing it means releasing the blocks that have been containing an expansion that's been trying to happen all along. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're not inadequate. You're blocked, and blocks can be removed. The 8 signs show you where your blocks are. The courage to face them shows you who you're becoming. And the choice to release them reveals the soul that's been waiting to emerge since before you can remember. Your soul wants to grow. It's always wanted to grow. It came here specifically to grow. The only question that matters is, are you ready to get out of its way? The blocks are yours to release. The growth is waiting, and the soul you're meant to become is already calling you forward. All you have to do is answer.